Well, apparently, I was not even testing the latest update to lossless scaling frame generation because there is a beta version which is potentially better with more settings that is available right now, and I'm gonna show you how you can download it if you already own this program on Steam. All you have to do is right click, properties, betas, and select the beta version. That's it. As soon as you do that, you get an update. And now here's the thing. Some people commented in the video, can you imagine if they figured out a way to remove those artifacts that we can see at the bottom of the screen? Nvidia is screwed, okay? Because that would be like just perfect. Of course, we do have some other issues and interpolation artifacts, but definitely that was the biggest deal breaker. And actually, there was someone who commented, can't you just zoom in with your TV and so then you don't see that issue? And I'm like, yeah, that's a good idea, and we can change the field of view of the game so it doesn't even matter that much. Well, it seems like maybe for another reason, but here we have a setting that I didn't notice before. This crop input, which can fix that actually. So if you're playing a racing game, for example, and the interpolation artifacts at the bottom of the screen are bothering you, you can just come here and do this 150, for example. And what this is going to do, it is going to kill some of the pixels here at the bottom, and you will see like an ultra wide, not really, but you will stretch the amount of information you have on screen. But of course, the aspect ratio is still fine, and then you don't see the problems. So it just works without the power of AI. Thank you very much. Okay. So this is actually a great workaround. It is not a solution for the issues, but give it a try. Depending on the game, this might be, especially I think for racing games, this is a great idea. Now, I am not a big fan of losing the size of the screen I paid for. Okay? So in this video, I will also address some of the comments and questions because we got a lot of attractions and a lot of new people to the channel. Thank you very much for checking out the video. Some of you asked me, hey, what is that display that you are using? It looks amazing. Well, let me tell you this. This TV looks amazing. It is a Samsung S90D, which, by the way, also has low latency motion interpolation. And I was actually comparing them. So I want to give you my take after using lossless scaling frame generation more, and I want to compare that with Samsung Game Motion Plus, which I've been using for the longest time since I got this TV. So this is an amazing QD OLED panel that looks so natural. The calibration of this TV is just absolutely amazing. And yes, Cyberpunk looks insane. But this is not the native HDR that comes with the game. I already shared this fix. It is called RenoDX HDR. Link in the description of the video. It is free. It completely fixes the HDR in Cyberpunk from the ground up. If you see this, you're going to scratch your head and be like, how the developers mess it up so bad? Because this is absolutely insane. It is so good, and we have all the settings available. Everything, peak brightness, the overall brightness of the game, the saturation of the colors, the shadows, everything you want is right here. Now, this doesn't look good in front of me because I actually changed the game to look good on camera. I've been doing this for a while and I understand the limitations of recording this screen. It's actually almost impossible. So what I did was to raise the shadows with these settings, and I lowered the brightness of my TV to 0. So if you think, wow, that's looking amazing, it is actually when I have all the right settings. But in front of me, this looks actually terrible. I have, terrible washed out shadows, and the brightness of my TV, I'm gonna show you, is actually in 0. So I'm using the same camera settings as I did in the previous video. So when I come here to brightness, you can see 0 brightness. So yeah, this TV looks absolutely insane. If you can get one of these big QD OLEDs, it's just an absolutely amazing experience. So I wish I had one of those very high refresh rate monitors to test lossless scaling. When I get the 5090, test the multiple frame generation and get 400 frames and tell you how amazing that is. But the thing is, I am not going to downgrade the size because the size and the immersion is absolutely amazing. Unfortunately, 144 frames per second, sample on hold, without strobing, without any backlight manipulation technology is not enough to get good motion clarity. If you play with a mouse, that's another thing I want to address from the comments in the previous video. Some people say, this makes no sense. Your input lag is worse. Now you're getting weird artifacts that were not there before. And you're lowering your base frame rate. So why would you do that? It makes no sense. And they are using a mouse. So in my opinion, this app, if you are not getting like over 100 frames base, it doesn't make a lot of sense if you're using a mouse. Now, if you're getting 120 frames and you have a 480 hertz monitor, you can just multiply your frame rate to hit those 480 FPS all the time and get that motion clarity improvement, even with a mouse, even for competitive gaming. It might make sense because it's going to look smooth and it's still going to feel good. But from 48 frames, like what I was trying, or 60, it doesn't make any sense. What I was trying, 48 FPS, then I tripled the FPS to get 144. That makes no sense with a mouse, because when you're playing with a mouse, you're doing this fast. So you're doing fast camera changes. It is more important to have better input lag if you're doing this than to have better motion, because if you don't pan the camera slow, or at least in a smooth speed, if you just do suddenly, just change the camera, boom, 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 you're not actually enjoying the motion clarity at all. That's why for PC gaming, most of the focus has been input lag. And it is very important to have the least amount of input lag. I think that is where Reflex 2 is going to be absolutely insane. I'm gonna share with you in the next video a demo that you can try, and basically shows you one of the key features of Reflex 2. So it is not the same. It is a demo to try asynchronous reprojection outside of VR, which is unheard of. I wish we had this in some games. And you're going to be absolutely blown away. Basically, it doesn't matter if you have 30 frames, 60 frames. When it comes to input lag, it's just flawless. So let's say you have a 480 hertz OLED. You have 30 FPS and you're like moving the camera and you're like, this is perfect. It is like if you were actually getting 480 FPS when it comes to input lag. And the only problem is the lower the FPS, the more, occlusion artifacts you see. So you will see that things that are being occluded by an object, the trick doesn't know what's behind the object. And because it is reprojecting the same frame, it is just warping it. then you see the artifacts. But the higher the FPS, let's say if you try it at 60 or higher, then you don't see any issues. That's what. Now Reflex is not doing the reprojection the same way as this demo I'm gonna share with you, but it is taking the input lag benefit of that technology. And let me tell you, once you see frame generation with a 50 series plus Reflex, or even if you have a 40 series, you already have frame generation, and Reflex is gonna be available for the rest of the RTX GPUs. My point is, Reflex will enable a program like this to shine, okay? And if the game doesn't support Reflex 2, maybe a special K can enable it. Because a special K is a very advanced tool that actually has some latency. Actually, you can force NVIDIA ultra low latency in some games and all that stuff. So once we have Reflex 2, frame generation is going to make these people that are not happy with it because they are playing with a mouse, they're gonna make these people a lot happier. Let me tell you that, because it now feels extremely responsive, and it's now also better in motion. So that's a win-win. Of course, we can never have everything without no downsides. And after using this actually for some hours, I can see the defects. Now I settled with 72 frames, double the FPS. I tweaked the in-game settings, and I tweaked the lossless scaling settings. So I settled with 50% here in this resolution scale, which is actually the resolution scaling of the interpolation. So actually the interpolated frames are being upscaled up to 4K. So this is like from 1080p to 4K. So that's why I was actually struggling to see the downgrade in resolution at all. And it looks shockingly good. So when you lower this to the minimum, you are actually just affecting the way it looks in motion. It's gonna look less sharp. And you might also get more weird artifacts because this would have a lower internal resolution to resolve the details, basically. But I settled with these settings, just 2x, 72 FPS on my game. And to address people asking, well, how do you know you're getting 144 frames? It says 72 FPS here on Rio Turner. So the way I know that is, first, because I can see it with my eyes, and second, because if I go here to my TV settings, VRR is on, and I have an FPS counter that I am seeing right now. It says 144 FPS. So that's how I know 144 FPS are being delivered to my display. And it's obvious when I move the camera. So after trying this for a while now, for some hours, just driving around and shooting and stuff, I have to say it is not perfect. I can see some interpolation artifacts that are not actually present with my Samsung low latency motion interpolation. So this TV has Game Motion Plus, which is a feature that does the same thing. It works from 60 to 120, so this would be more clear, and actually, I don't think actually feels more responsive actually, but it might be at the same level. But the thing is, the Samsung motion interpolation doesn't have as many of the weird artifacts that I see with lossless scaling. However, lossless scaling is definitely better. I would say it might be better. It's not like definitely better, depending on the background. It is better in having less artifacts surrounding the character, but it depends on the background. So it is not perfect, but I think that some of these problems to resolve complex geometry that we can see with this lossless scaling, they might get fixed or improved in the future, because I think my TV is actually doing a better job sometimes. So that tells me this could be still better. So I think the developers of this app are doing an absolutely incredible job, because every time I check out this, the improvements are just huge. Okay, and we're talking about a very small team. Basically, it's just a middle finger to Nvidia with all the trillions of dollars that they have, when they tell you multiple frame generation is only possible with the power of AI, and you need to buy a 50 series GPU, and this program is saying, well, actually not. You can have multiple frame generation for all GPUs no matter what. So what can Nvidia say to this? That's how you know what they're telling you is just BS. Okay. But I understand, Nvidia doesn't want to have these issues, maybe, because then their technology might earn a bad reputation. Because this is a program that's very cool, and it allows you to get a higher frame rate on any GPU, and people are going to be more tolerable if they see issues, because they're gonna be like, okay, but it works. Yeah, I can see the issues, but my frame rate is double or triple, so I'm happy with it. I'm okay with the issues. But if Nvidia does the same thing, the reviewers, everyone is just gonna be like, oh, this is trash. Nvidia is scamming you, telling you you're done with the frame rate. It's actually not true. So I see that part. So it's not like Nvidia is not your friend, but it's just about making money. It's a big, evil, greedy corporation. I understand all of that, but you also have to look at that perspective. I still think they should, and they could easily enable multiple frame generation for all RTX GPUs, at least, even if it is not as good. Yeah, it could have a higher input lag, it could have a lower performance, more interpolation artifacts, but it still works. And I think it should be understandable for everyone. You're getting a new feature that was not part of the marketing when you bought your GPU, so you should be happy, but still people are gonna just hammer on Nvidia. On the other hand, a program like this, everyone is like, wow, this is awesome, it's just absolutely insane, even when it is not perfect. And I think that's okay, and that's understandable. So that's my thoughts. I've been actually playing with this setup right now, 72 FPS up to 144. And I think this is absolutely amazing for what it's doing. The input lag is good enough to play the game. I can get all the frames delivered to my TV to get 144. Looks a lot better in motion. Now 144 is still not enough to get great motion clarity, but it's the best I can get. So I will take that. And yeah, let me know your thoughts and opinions. What do you think about this app if you had the chance to try it, especially with higher refresh rate monitors? Also, before we finish, let me say this. I am a big fan of these technologies because I understand that they are necessary for very high FPS gaming. There's no way we will ever have 1000 frames per second, rock solid, no fluctuations, at native 8K without anti-aliasing, ray tracing. It's never going to happen, okay? So I fully understand that we need upscaling, we need frame generation to get those high FPS. So now, why would you need such a high frame rate when we used to have CRTs that look perfect in motion at just 60 FPS? Why would you need that many frames? Because of HDR. So you can lower the persistence. There are many different technologies. Now we have the CRT simulation technology to reduce the persistence of the display, to improve motion without any artifacts. So you have no motion interpolation artifacts, nothing. You are only trading brightness for motion clarity. So actually, that option will be there, and hopefully we will have the CRT simulation available to use for all games on the PC soon. Probably Special K, even lossless scaling can enable that. So that's a great option, especially if your display is very bright. You don't have to deal with the interpolation artifacts. You just lower the persistence. It looks better in motion. But the reason why we need a higher frame rate is because of HDR. For the best picture quality, you want full HDR brightness. You don't want to lose any nits. And also, lowering the persistence is not exactly the same as increasing the frame rate. So for example, 60 FPS, you cut the persistence in half by doing black frame insertion, for example, which is not ideal. It flickers, it's not the best solution. But let's say you do that. Now it looks like 120 frames, but real 120 frames will look better. Not only because it can be brighter with full HDR brightness, but the difference between lowering the persistence and a higher frame rate, even if they are equivalent, is that lowering the persistence is not improving every single aspect of motion clarity. It is mostly improving the eye tracking clarity. But there are other aspects that are a little bit difficult to explain. Actually, let's say your focus in an object that is moving and it looks clear, but the background is also moving. That doesn't get as good of an improvement by just lowering the persistence. So that is one example that we might be able to notice if we have them side by side. But the thing is, 120 FPS is not clear enough anyway, so it doesn't really matter. It would be better to just lower the persistence even more. But the thing is, we need crazy high frame rate. It will never happen with raw performance. So my point is, the reason why I'm telling you all of this is because I want to make very clear that there is no argument. It would definitely be better to have games to be 8K, real 8K, no low resolution grass or hair, low resolution this and low resolution that, to then use TAA and upscale and up. Of course, it is better to have raw pixels, raw frames, no frame generation, absolute brute force picture quality. Of course, that's better. But the problem is, the way the industry is moving is trying to get as fast as possible to realism, to photorealism, because that sells more. Most people don't know enough or to care about the clarity of the games, and when they see a trailer on YouTube, it doesn't matter if it's 30 FPS, if it looks more photorealistic, it doesn't matter. And the blurriness that I complain about in some of these games, oh, TAA is super blurry, it's terrible. You cannot see that through a YouTube video anyway. So the direction the industry is moving is trying to get as fast as possible to photorealism. And I think it is in the hands of the developers to give us something that I would consider to be far superior. What I would do and the direction that I would like the industry to go is, you cannot think about increasing the quality of the pixels by sacrificing the clarity of the game. That doesn't make sense because it is not better. So my idea is your game running at very high frame rate already on the best GPU we have on the market, and it is raw pixels, like absolutely perfect, like no ghosting, no smearing, no temporal smearing abuse, artifacts, none of that. Okay, well now let's increase and let's add ray tracing or whatever. But you cannot start just adding shadows and stuff and then lower the internal resolution of the game, then start doing weird tricks to actually get those features, because it is not worth it, in my opinion. I much rather have a game with a significantly smaller scope than Cyberpunk, for example. I don't care if it's open world. Of course, open world games are cool, and not every game has to be the way I want. So I would be okay with a linear game that has a much smaller scope, less realistic graphics, but it is razor sharp. No blurriness, no ghosting, nothing weird. It is just pure, raw beauty. That is what I would like. But it's not happening. It's not happening. It will not happen. Maybe we will get a developer that gives us that, a developer that agrees with me and with people like me that actually understand that's actually better. But the thing is, you release a game like that and people are going to be like, oh, that's like a PS3 game. Of course, we would have to go back to PS2, PS3 level of a scope. I would be perfectly fine with that. Give me a Prince of Persia-like game with that level of a scope, but just a little bit, of course, much better textures, much higher resolution, assets, so it looks nicer. I would be happier with that. I would be, yes, this is what we need. And then so basically we would go back in the scope for the games, but we would move forward without losing the clarity of the games. Because once you start upscaling from 720p and then generating frames, like what Jensen is telling you, basically, 16 out of, GPU is just generating or rendering 1 pixel, and then AI is generating 16 pixels. That's way too much, bro. Like, it is obvious that is going to have a lot of compromises. Obviously. That's not going to be the best when it comes to, what I'm talking about, image clarity. So I don't want to see those compromises all the time, is my point. It is okay if they do a Cyberpunk game, but the problem is every single game that comes out is on Real Engine or even if it's a different engine, it's the same thing. We got the Star Wars game using the Snowdrop engine, which is actually very, very good looking, and they messed it up. It looks super blurry. The image clarity is terrible, ghosting, stuttering, you name it. And on Real Engine, let's not even go there. It's just absolutely horrendous. So the problem is that every game has those issues. And so we have to use the fake frames to fix the developers' optimizations, because they don't understand. Fake frames are amazing and they are necessary for very high frame rate gaming. It is not to optimize your game. To have Black Myth Wukong running on the consoles at 60 FPS with motion interpolation, that should be illegal. Okay, that's terrible. That is not a good idea. It's not going to give you a good gaming experience. One of the main reasons why I want to buy the 5090 is because actually I want to play Black Myth Wukong. I think the game looks, as a game, I'm a Souls fan. Those are the games that I play. I think the game's so fantastic. But I couldn't. I mean, it's so ugly. I cannot even play that game on my system. It is blurry. It looks overly sharp. So then I have to download a mod to fix those issues. And I have to disable TAA, I have to increase the resolution, so then I cannot get a playable frame rate with my PC, basically. So I need to brute force with a 5090 just to get an image that looks decent. But when you go online and you see 4090 Black Myth Wukong max out at 4K without DLSS, it's dropping below 30 frames per second. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, you don't buy a 4090 to start with a 30 FPS problem, to then have to upscale from 1080p and then do frame generation to get a playable frame rate. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, so I agree with all the sentiment of people that, oh, these are fake frames, it's not the real thing. I agree with you, but I think it is amazing if you use it the right way. It's not to use this to fix optimization and lazy work from the developers. So that's it. That's my take. That's to clear up, especially with a lot of people that we got that are new to the channel. Thank you very much for subscribing, for watching the videos. Let me know if you have any thoughts and opinions. So far, I've answered to almost, I would say definitely more than 99% of all the comments in this YouTube channel. I have answered them. It is getting a little bit out of hands because 40,000 views in one day, I don't think I can keep up with that, honestly. But I will try my best to keep replying to the comments. I don't think this video is gonna get 40,000 views, but if it does, well, that's amazing. I can actually retire and just do YouTube and actually get into it harder and do testing with more time and maybe even do some editing and stuff. So yeah, thanks for the support. Let me know your thoughts and opinions and if you have any questions.